The millionaire's daughter despised her family's new driver until a dangerous situation forced them to work together and grow closer. The deafening roar of the helicopter cut through the morning air as it landed on the helipad of the Sinclair mansion. Victoria Sinclair, the 23-year-old heiress to the Sinclair tech empire, descended with a look of disdain on her perfectly made-up face. Her high heels clicked on the concrete as she walked towards the waiting limousine, completely ignoring the new driver who held the door open for her. "Miss Sinclair, welcome back," said the driver, a man in his 30s with short dark hair and broad shoulders under his impeccable uniform. Victoria rolled her eyes and got into the car without saying a word. The driver closed the door softly and took his place behind the wheel. "Where to, miss?" he asked, looking at her in the rear-view mirror. "Office. And try not to hit any traffic jams this time," she replied coldly, already engrossed in her smartphone. The driver, Alex Foster, swallowed the answer that threatened to escape his lips. He needed this job, and dealing with the whims of a spoiled socialite was a small price to pay for the generous salary that came with it. As he navigated the busy streets of San Francisco, Alex couldn't help but think about how he had gotten there. Just 6 months ago, he was serving his country as a Special Forces soldier. Now, here he was, driving for a girl who had probably never had to fight for anything in her life. The silence in the car was palpable, broken only by Victoria's occasional irritated sigh when traffic forced them to stop. Alex kept his eyes on the road, but his mind wandered to his own family, his sick mother and younger sister who depended on him. This job was his lifeline, a chance to give them the life they deserved. Suddenly, a sharp shout from Victoria brought him back to reality. "Stop the car, now!" Alex braked sharply, making the tires sing on the asphalt. Before he could ask what was happening, Victoria was already out of the car, running towards a nearby alley. Confused and alarmed, Alex quickly followed her. Turning the corner, he saw Victoria kneeling next to a small, furry body. A dog, apparently run over, lay moaning on the ground. "Do something!" Victoria shouted, tears streaming down her face, ruining her perfect makeup. "We can't let him die." For a moment, Alex was stunned. Was this the same woman who had treated him with such disdain only minutes before? But years of military training kicked in, and he quickly knelt down beside the wounded animal. "He's breathing, but he needs immediate veterinary attention," Alex said, quickly assessing the situation. "There's a veterinary clinic a few blocks away. If we're quick, we can save him." Victoria nodded, tears still flowing. "So what are you waiting for? Let's go." Carefully, Alex picked up the dog in his arms and ran back to the car, Victoria right behind him. She opened the back door and Alex gently placed the animal on the seat. "Stay with him," Alex instructed. "Keep him calm and apply pressure to any bleeding wounds." For the first time since he started working for the Sinclairs, Alex saw Victoria obey an order without question. She sat in the back seat, holding the injured dog on her lap, murmuring words of comfort as Alex drove through the city as if their lives depended on it. Arriving at the veterinary clinic, Alex carried the dog inside, with Victoria right behind. The clinic staff sprang into action immediately, taking the animal to the emergency room. While they waited for news, Alex observed Victoria. Her face was stained with tears and dirt, her perfectly tidy hair now a disheveled mess. She looked small and vulnerable, so different from the cold, distant woman he knew. "It's going to be okay," he said softly. "We're just in time." Victoria looked at him, really seeing him for the first time. "Thank you," she whispered. I don't know what I would have done without you." Alex nodded, a small smile forming on his lips. "That's what I'm here for, Miss Sinclair." When the vet finally came out to inform them that the dog would survive, the relief on Victoria's face was palpable. She turned to Alex, a new respect in her eyes. "I don't think I've ever asked your name," she said, looking a little embarrassed. Alex Foster," he replied. "Well, Alex Foster," Victoria said, a small smile forming on her lips. "I think I owe you a proper thank you, and perhaps an apology." As they sat side by side in the waiting room of the veterinary clinic, Alex realized that something had changed. The barrier between them, built up by prejudice and misunderstanding, was beginning to crumble. And as the morning sun filtered through the clinic's windows, illuminating Victoria's face, Alex couldn't help thinking that maybe just maybe, this was the start of something new and unexpected. The soft sound of paws against the wooden floor echoed through the Sinclair mansion. Maxon, as Victoria had decided to call the rescued dog, limped slightly beside her, his tail wagging happily despite the protective cone around his neck. 3 weeks had passed since the incident, and life on the Sinclair estate had changed in ways no one could have predicted. Victoria stopped at the kitchen door, watching Alex, who had his back to her, preparing something on the counter. She hesitated, still not entirely at ease with this new dynamic between them. "You know," she began, making Alex turn around, "when I hired a driver, I didn't expect him to also be a chef." Alex smiled, that warm smile she was beginning to appreciate more than she'd like to admit. "And I didn't expect that driving for the Sinclairs would include looking after a rescued dog," he quipped, leaning over to scratch behind Max's ears. Victoria approached, curious about what he was up to. "What's that?" "Homemade dog food," Alex explained. "I thought Max deserved something special while he recovers." Victoria felt a wave of guilt. "I should have thought of that." "Hey," Alex said softly, touching her arm briefly. "You're already doing a lot. How many millionaire heiresses would adopt a mongrel from the street?" She laughed, a sound that was becoming more frequent these days. "Probably not many. But then again, how many drivers would know how to look after an injured dog and still make gourmet food for it?" Alex's gaze became distant for a moment. "I learned a few things in the army. Sometimes we had to improvise in difficult situations." Victoria felt her curiosity grow. She knew little about Alex's past, apart from the fact that he had served. "It must have been difficult," she said softly. Alex shrugged, turning his attention back to Max's food. "It had its moments, but it also taught me a lot. How to appreciate the little things, for example." Victoria reflected on his words. Over the last few weeks, she had begun to see the world in a different way. Small gestures of kindness, like Alex looking after Max, suddenly seemed more meaningful than the expensive dinners and extravagant parties that used to fill her schedule. "Speaking of appreciating things," Alex said, interrupting her thoughts, "shouldn't you be getting ready for that important meeting today?" Victoria cursed softly, glancing at her watch. "Damn, you're right. I almost forgot." "Go get ready," Alex said with a smile. "I'll finish up here and take you." 45 minutes later, they were in the car, navigating the San Francisco traffic. Victoria fiddled nervously with her briefcase, reviewing her notes for the 100th time. "You'll do fine," Alex said, picking up her anxiety in the rearview mirror. Victoria sighed. "It's my first important presentation to the board. If I screw it up—" "You won't," Alex interrupted her firmly. "You're smart, capable, and you know this project better than anyone." Victoria stared at him, surprised by his confidence in her. "How can you be so sure?" "Because I've seen how hard you work," he replied simply, "and because you care, not just about the project, but about the people it will help." His words calmed something inside her. It was true. This clean energy project meant a lot to her. It wasn't just about profits or pleasing the board. It was about making a difference. When they arrived at the imposing Sinclair Tech building, Alex opened the door for her. "Good luck," he said. "Although you don't have to." Victoria smiled, feeling more confident than she had a few minutes ago. "Thank you, Alex, for everything." As she walked towards the building, Alex watched her, a mixture of pride and something else, something he wasn't yet ready to name, growing in his chest. Hours later, when Victoria came out of the building, her face was radiant. Alex didn't need to ask how it went. Her smile said it all. "They loved it," she exclaimed as soon as she got into the car. "The project has been approved." "I knew you could do it," Alex said, his own smile mirroring hers. On the way back to the mansion, Victoria was talking excitedly about the meeting, her eyes shining with enthusiasm. Alex listened to her, asking occasional questions, genuinely interested. It wasn't until they were almost home that Victoria realized something. "Wait, how did you know so much about the project? I never told you the details." Alex looked a little embarrassed. "I may have heard you practicing your presentation a few times. It seemed important to you, so I did some research on the subject." Victoria stared at him, a wave of emotion hitting her. This man, whom she had barely known for a few weeks, had cared enough to learn about something simply because it was important to her. When they arrived at the mansion, Victoria hesitated before getting out of the car. "Alex," she said softly, "thank you. Not just for today, but for everything." Their gazes met, and for a moment, the world seemed to hang in the balance. There was something growing between them, something that neither of them was quite ready to acknowledge. The moment was broken by the sound of Max barking inside, eager to welcome them. "I think we'd better go inside," Alex said, his voice a little hoarse. "We've got a hungry dog to feed." Victoria nodded, getting out of the car. As they walked together towards the house, she couldn't help thinking about how her life had changed over the last few weeks, and how, perhaps, the biggest changes were yet to come. The fall sun bathed Presidio Park in golden light, the leaves of the trees dancing gently in the cool San Francisco breeze. Victoria walked beside Alex, Max trotting happily ahead of them, his recovery almost complete. "I still can't believe you talked me into this," Victoria said, adjusting the cap she wore to disguise her well-known face. Alex laughed, a sound she was beginning to love. "What? Take a walk in a public park like a normal person? How awful!" Victoria gave him a look, pretending to be offended, but couldn't contain the smile that formed on her lips. Over the last few weeks, Alex had become more than just her driver. He was her confidant, her support, and, although she hesitated to admit it, perhaps her first real friend. "You know," Alex began, his voice more serious, "there's something I wanted to tell you." Victoria's heart sped up involuntarily. "What is it?" Alex hesitated for a moment before continuing. "I've been offered a job. A private security company is looking for someone with my military experience." Victoria felt as if the ground had disappeared beneath her feet. "Oh?" she said, trying to keep her voice steady. That's great, Alex. Congratulations." Alex studied her for a moment. "I haven't accepted yet," he said softly. Victoria forced a smile. "Why not?" "It seems like a great opportunity." Before Alex could reply, Max started barking furiously, pulling hard on his collar. A squirrel had caught his attention, and before any of them could react, Max broke free, running towards the busy street. "Max!" Victoria shouted, panic taking hold of her. In an instant, Alex was in action. He ran after the dog, his sharp reflexes coming into play. Cars honked and braked sharply as Alex launched himself into the street, grabbing Max at the last second before an SUV could hit them. Victoria watched the scene in horror, her heart almost stopping. When Alex returned to the sidewalk, Max safe in his arms, she couldn't hold back the tears that began to fall. "Are you all right?" she asked, her voice trembling, checking both Alex and Max frantically. "We're fine," Alex assured her, putting Max down and holding his collar firmly this time. "Just a bit scared, aren't you, buddy?" Victoria threw herself into Alex's arms, sobbing against his chest. I thought... "Shh," Alex murmured, wrapping her in a firm hug. "It's all right. We're fine." They stayed like that for a long moment, Victoria gradually calming down in Alex's arms. When she finally pulled away, her eyes were red, but there was a determination in them. "You can't take that job," she said abruptly. Alex blinked, surprised. "What?" "The security job," Victoria elaborated. "You can't take it. I need you here." A small smile formed on Alex's lips. "Victoria, I wasn't going to take it anyway." It was her turn to be surprised. "You weren't?" Alex shook her head. "No. I realized that I already have everything I need right here." The meaning behind his words hung between them, loaded with unspoken possibilities. "Alex, Victoria began, but was interrupted by the sound of her phone ringing insistently. She picked it up, frowning as she saw the name on the screen. "It's my father," she said, the concern evident in her voice. Jonathan Sinclair rarely contacted her directly, especially outside of working hours. "Hello, Dad," she answered, taking a step away from Alex. Victoria's expression quickly changed from concern to shock as she listened. "What? But how?" Yes, I'm coming over now." She hung up, turning to Alex with wide eyes. "There's been a cyber attack on Sinclair Tech. All our systems have been compromised." Alex immediately went into action mode. "Come on, I'll take you there." As they ran back to the car, Max trotting obediently alongside them this time, Victoria couldn't help feeling that this was just the start of something much bigger and potentially dangerous. On the way to Sinclair Tech, the silence in the car was tense. Victoria typed furiously into her phone, trying to get more information, while Alex maneuvered deftly through the traffic. Who could do this? Victoria muttered, more to herself than to Alex. And why? Alex kept his eyes on the road, but his mind was working quickly. His instincts, honed by years of military service, told him that this was no ordinary cyber attack. When they arrived at the imposing Sinclair Tech building, chaos was visible even outside. Agitated employees rushed out, some carrying boxes of files, others talking frantically on the phone. "Stay close to me," Alex said to Victoria as they entered the building. She nodded, grateful for his firm presence at her side. In Jonathan Sinclair's office, the tension was palpable. The patriarch of the Sinclair family seemed to have aged years in a few hours, his face marked by worry. "Victoria," he said when he saw her, his voice tired, "the situation is worse than we imagined." As Jonathan explained the extent of the attack, Alex watched silently, his military mind analyzing every detail. This wasn't just about money or data. There was something else going on, something that made his instinct for danger spike. Looking at Victoria, who was listening to her father with determination in her eyes, Alex knew that his life was about to change again. Whatever was to come, he would be by her side, not just as a driver or a friend, but as something more, something they were both still discovering. Night fell over San Francisco, and as the city lights began to glow, the shadow of an unknown threat loomed over Sinclair Tech and its occupants. The game had changed, and Alex knew that his skills would be needed more than ever to protect not only the company, but also the woman who, without him realizing it, had become the center of his world. Jonathan Sinclair's office was buzzing with activity even at 2 in the morning. Cybersecurity technicians were running around, their faces illuminated by the bluish light of multiple monitors. At the center of this organized chaos, Victoria stood firm, her determined eyes fixed on the screens in front of her. Alex stood nearby, his body tensed like a compressed spring. In the last 48 hours since the attack, he had barely left Victoria's side, taking short naps when he could, and keeping alert with strong coffee. "I found something," Victoria said suddenly, her voice cutting through the hum of tense conversations and clicking keyboards. "Dad, look at this." Jonathan approached quickly, followed by Alex. On the screen, a complex pattern of codes flashed, seemingly meaningless to most, but Victoria pointed to a specific sequence with growing excitement. "This isn't just a random attack," she explained, her fingers flying over the keyboard as she delved deeper into the analysis. "They were after something specific, the Clean Energy Project." Jonathan paled visibly. "But why? The project is still in its early stages." "Maybe it's not about what the project is now," Alex interjected, years of training in military strategy coming into play. "But about what it could become." Victoria looked at him with a mixture of surprise and admiration. "Exactly. Dad, I think someone discovered the true potential of the project before we were even ready to reveal it." Jonathan ran a hand over his tired face. "If it falls into the wrong hands, it won't," Victoria declared firmly. "We'll get it back." Alex stepped forward. "Sir, with all due respect, I think we need to consider that this might not just be a cybersecurity problem. If someone is willing to go this far for this project, they may not be limited to virtual attacks." Jonathan stared at him for a long moment, as if seeing him for the first time. "You're right, Mr. Foster. I think I underestimated their capabilities." "Alex has military experience, Dad," Victoria explained. "He can help us beyond his role as a driver." Jonathan nodded slowly. "Very well. Mr. Foster, from now on, you're in charge of Victoria's personal security." And he hesitated for a moment. "The general security of this project. Work with our security team to strengthen our defenses, both physical and digital." Alex was surprised by the sudden promotion, but nodded resolutely. "Yes, sir. I'll do my best." As the night wore on, turning into dawn, the team worked tirelessly. Victoria and the technicians tracked down the hackers, while Alex coordinated with the security team, implementing new protocols and identifying possible vulnerabilities. It was only when the first rays of sunlight began to seep through the office windows that Jonathan finally ordered everyone to rest. "You two," he said, looking at Victoria and Alex. "Go home. Get some rest. We'll need you fully fit." Victoria started to protest, but Alex gently touched her arm. "Your father is right. We can't help if we're exhausted." Reluctantly, Victoria agreed. In the elevator, descending to the parking garage, the silence between them was heavy with everything that had happened, and with the unspoken words. "Alex," Victoria began softly. But before she could continue, the elevator lights flickered, and it stopped abruptly, throwing them against the wall. "What's going on?" Victoria asked, a touch of panic in her voice. Alex immediately went into alert mode. "Stay close to me," he instructed, positioning himself protectively in front of her. For a few tense moments, nothing happened. Then, with a hiss, the elevator's communication system came to life. "Miss Sinclair," a distorted voice echoed in the small space. "I hope you're enjoying our little demonstration. Consider this a warning. Deliver the project, or the consequences will be far more serious than a simple elevator stoppage." As soon as the message finished, the elevator came back to life, descending smoothly as if nothing had happened. Victoria looked at Alex, fear evident in her eyes. "This is real, isn't it? It's not just a cyber attack. We really are in danger." Alex pulled her close, wrapping her in a protective embrace. "Yes, it's real. But I promise, Victoria, I won't let anything happen to you." When the elevator doors opened in the parking garage, they both knew that their lives had changed irrevocably. The game was now much more dangerous and the stakes much higher. As they drove back to the Sinclair mansion, the silence in the car was charged with tension and unspoken possibilities. Alex kept his eyes alert, constantly checking his mirrors, his military training in full force. Victoria, for her part, alternated between typing furiously on her tablet, analyzing data from the attack, and casting furtive glances at Alex. Her mind raced with a million thoughts, the imminent danger, the threatened project, and the growing awareness of her feelings for Alex. When they arrived at the mansion, Alex made a thorough sweep before allowing Victoria to enter. Max greeted them with excited barks, oblivious to the tension that hung in the air. "You should rest," Alex said softly, noticing the dark circles under Victoria's eyes. She shook her head. "I can't. Not with all this going on." Alex studied her for a moment before coming to a decision. "Then let's work together, but first, coffee." In the kitchen, as Alex prepared strong coffee for them both, Victoria watched him, noticing how gracefully and efficiently he moved, even in such a simple task. "Alex," she began, her voice almost a whisper, "I'm scared." He turned to her, their eyes meeting. In one fluid movement, he was at her side, his hands gently holding hers. "I know," he said, "but we're not alone in this. We have each other." The moment was interrupted by the shrill ringing of Victoria's phone. It was her father. "Victoria," Jonathan's voice sounded urgent. "We've just had another message. They've given us a deadline. We have 72 hours to deliver the project, or nafu." "Or what, Dad?" Victoria asked, fear evident in her voice. "Or they threatened to expose company secrets that could destroy us," Jonathan replied gravely. Victoria looked at Alex, the weight of the situation falling on them. The clock was ticking and the stakes had never been higher. "We'll be there in an hour, Dad," Victoria said, hanging up the phone. Alex was already on the move, checking the windows and doors. "I'll get the car ready. Stay close to Max and don't open the door for anyone." As Victoria quickly got ready, her mind raced with possibilities and fears. But amidst the chaos, one thing was clear. With Alex by her side, she felt stronger, more able to face whatever lay ahead. The rising sun painted the San Francisco sky in shades of pink and orange as they left the mansion, ready to face the most challenging day of their lives. The battle had only just begun, and Victoria knew she would need all her wits, courage and, above all, the strength she found in Alex to overcome it. The midday sun shone relentlessly over San Francisco, but inside Sinclair Tech's armored conference room, the air was cold and tense. Victoria was leaning over a table cluttered with laptops and documents, her eyes red with fatigue but shining with determination. Alex stood nearby, his posture vigilant, his eyes constantly scanning the room for threats. "We must be missing something," Victoria muttered, running a hand through her tousled hair. "They can't just have vanished into thin air." Jonathan Sinclair entered the room, his face a mask of concern. "Any progress?" Victoria shook her head in frustration. "Not yet. It's as if they know exactly how to avoid our detection. Or maybe," Alex interjected softly, "they have help from the inside." The silence that followed was deafening. Jonathan paled visibly, while Victoria looked at Alex with a mixture of shock and understanding. "An infiltrator," she whispered. "Of course. How did we not think of that before?" Jonathan sank into a nearby chair. "If that's true, we can't trust anyone outside this room." "We need a decoy," Alex said, his years of military training coming into play. "Something that looks valuable enough to lure our traitor, but actually leads us straight to him." Victoria nodded slowly, an idea forming in her mind. What if we pretended to find a critical flaw in the project? Something that would make it useless to whoever stole it? "That could work," Jonathan agreed, a glimmer of hope in his eyes, "but it would have to be convincing. And only a very small circle could know the truth." "Just the three of us," Alex said firmly. "The fewer people who know, the less chance of the plan leaking out." The next few hours were a frantic race against time. Victoria worked tirelessly to create a convincing loophole in the project, while Alex and Jonathan planned how to disseminate the information in a controlled manner. When night fell, the plan was in motion. An emergency meeting was called, and the news of the supposed failure was carefully disseminated to a select group of high-ranking officials. Now it was time to wait. Victoria and Alex were in her office, the tension palpable in the air. Max slept at their feet, oblivious to the drama unfolding. "What if it doesn't work?" Victoria asked softly, the vulnerability in her voice making Alex's heart squeeze. He moved closer to her, taking her hands in his. "It will work. You're brilliant, Victoria. If anyone can solve this, it's you." Their eyes met, and for a moment, the world around them seemed to disappear. Victoria felt her heart racing, aware of Alex's closeness, of the warmth of his hands. "Alex, The moment was interrupted by the shrill sound of the security alarm. They both jumped, Alex immediately in protective mode. "Stay here," he ordered, moving quickly to the door. "No way!" Victoria snapped back, already on her heels. "We're in this together, remember?" Despite the seriousness of the situation, Alex couldn't hold back a small smile. This was the Victoria he had learned to admire, fearless and determined. They moved silently through the dark corridors, guided only by the emergency light. The sound of hurried footsteps echoed in the distance. Turning a corner, they came upon a shocking scene. The company's head of IT, a man who had worked for the Sinclairs for over 2 decades, was furiously typing away at one of the main terminals. "Mr. Pearson," Victoria called out, incredulous. The man turned around, panic evident in his eyes. "Miss Sinclair, I can explain." But before any explanation could be given, a deafening explosion shook the building. The lights flickered and then went out completely, plunging them into darkness. In the ensuing chaos, Alex grabbed Victoria, pulling her close. "We have to get out of here now." As they ran through the smoky corridors, the sound of more explosions echoed through the building. It was clear that this wasn't just about stealing information. Someone wanted to destroy Sinclair Tech completely. Reaching the parking lot, Alex quickly put Victoria in the car. "Where's my dad?" she shouted, panic evident in her voice. As if in response, Victoria's cell phone rang. It was Jonathan. "Victoria, thank God you're all right." Her father's voice sounded relieved. "I'm safe, but I can't tell you where. Listen, you need to go to the safe place we discussed. Don't trust anyone but Alex. Do you understand?" "Yes, Dad," Victoria replied, tears in her eyes. "Be careful." As Alex drove furiously through the streets of San Francisco, Victoria looked back, seeing the silhouette of Sinclair Tech in flames against the night sky. Her life, her legacy, everything was falling apart. But as she looked at Alex, her determined expression illuminated by the city lights, Victoria felt a surge of hope. No matter what came next, they would face it together. The car plunged into the night, leaving the chaos behind and heading for an uncertain destination. The battle was far from over, and the next steps they took could determine not only the future of Sinclair Tech, but also their own. The rustic cabin in the Sierra Nevada mountains seemed surreal after the chaos of San Francisco. Victoria was standing on the porch, watching the sun rise over the trees, a steaming cup of coffee in her trembling hands. Behind her, Alex was meticulously checking the security systems they had installed during the night. 3 days had passed since the explosion at Sinclair Tech. 3 days on the run, constantly looking over her shoulder, sleeping in shifts. 3 days with no news of Jonathan. "All secure," Alex announced, joining her on the balcony. His eyes traveled over Victoria's tired face, the worry evident on her features. Victoria nodded distractedly, her thoughts miles away. "Alex," she began, her voice almost a whisper. What if my father?" "No," Alex interrupted her firmly, putting his hands on her shoulders. "Don't think like that. Jonathan Sinclair is an intelligent and astute man. He's fine." Victoria stared at him, seeking comfort in his eyes. "How can you be so sure?" "Because he has something to fight for," Alex replied softly, "just like us." The moment was interrupted by the high-pitched sound of one of the laptops they had brought. They both rushed inside, adrenaline pumping through their veins. On the screen, an encrypted email flashed up. Victoria opened it with trembling fingers, her heart almost stopping as she recognized the code used. "It's from my dad," she whispered. Alex leaned over her shoulder, reading along with her. "White dove, the nest is not safe. The red fox has revealed himself. Find the hidden scroll where the river kisses the mountain. Beware of the shadows. Watchful eagle." Victoria frowned, trying to decipher the message. White dove. That was the nickname my mother gave me when I was little. "And watchful eagle must be your father," Alex deduced. "But what does the rest mean?" Victoria stood up abruptly, her eyes shining with realization. "The river that kisses the mountain. Alex, this is it. There's a waterfall a few kilometers from here where we used to camp when I was a kid." "Then that's where we're going," Alex said, already moving to pick up his weapons. The journey through the dense forest was challenging, but Victoria moved with renewed determination. Alex followed close behind, his senses on high alert. When they finally reached the waterfall, the beauty of the place contrasted dramatically with the tension they felt. The crystal-clear water cascaded over ancient rocks, creating a gentle mist in the air. "There," Victoria pointed to a rock formation near the base of the waterfall. "There must be a cave behind the waterfall." Carefully, they moved along the slippery rocks. Alex was the first to enter the hidden cave, his hand firmly on his gun as he checked inside. "It's clear," he called out, and Victoria followed him. At the bottom of the cave, partially hidden by shadows, was a metal box. Victoria opened it with trembling hands, revealing a series of documents and a USB stick. "My God," she whispered, her eyes wide as she quickly read the papers. "Alex, this is much bigger than we imagined." Before she could elaborate, the sound of a breaking branch echoed outside the cave. In an instant, Alex was in a defensive position, pushing Victoria behind him. "Who's there?" he called, his voice firm and threatening. For a tense moment, only the sound of falling water filled the air. Then a figure emerged from the shadows, its hands raised in a gesture of surrender. "Pearson!" Victoria exclaimed, recognizing the former head of IT at Sinclair Tech. The man looked exhausted and frightened. "Miss Sinclair, please, I can explain." Alex kept his gun pointed at Pearson. "Then start talking. Now." Pearson swallowed. I was forced to help them. They threatened my family, but I never wanted anyone to get hurt, I swear." "Who's they?" Victoria asked, her voice trembling with anger and fear. "A consortium of energy companies," Pearson replied. "They want to suppress Sinclair Tech's clean energy project. If it succeeds, it could make their technologies obsolete." Victoria exchanged a glance with Alex. The pieces of the puzzle were beginning to fit together. "What about my father?" she asked, dreading the answer. "He's safe," Pearson assured her. "He found out about the consortium and is gathering evidence to expose them. That's why he planted the bait of the project failure." Alex slowly lowered his gun but remained alert. "Why should we believe you?" Pearson sighed heavily. "Because I have the missing evidence," he said, pulling a small device out of his pocket. "It's all here, names, transactions, threats, everything." Victoria took the device with trembling hands, her heart racing at the possibility of finally having answers. "If this is true," she said slowly, "we can put an end to all this. We can save the company and expose those responsible." Alex nodded, his mind already working on a plan. "But first, we need to get out of here. It's not safe to stay in one place for too long." As they prepared to leave, Victoria looked at Alex, a new determination in her eyes. "We're close, aren't we? To finishing all this?" Alex took her hand, squeezing it gently. "We are, and we're going to do it together." With Pearson in tow, they left the cave, plunging back into the forest. The sun was beginning to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. It was a reminder that, no matter how dark the night might be, a new day would always come. And with that new day, Victoria knew, would come the chance to regain everything they had lost, and perhaps gain something she never knew she needed until she met Alex. The rising sun painted the San Francisco skyline in shades of gold and pink as the black limousine pulled up in front of the imposing FBI building. Victoria took a deep breath, her eyes meeting Alex's in the rearview mirror. He nodded slightly, a silent gesture of support and confidence. "Are you ready?" Alex asked softly. Victoria looked down at the flash drive in her hands, containing all the evidence they had collected over the last few days. "As ready as I can be." They got out of the car, Pearson following close behind. The former head of IT looked like he had aged years in the last 72 hours, the weight of his actions and impending redemption visible in every line of his face. Inside the building, they were met by a team of agents led by a serious-looking woman who introduced herself as Special Agent Chen. "Miss Sinclair," she said, holding out her hand. "Your father contacted us. I've been expecting you." The next few hours were a whirlwind of depositions, evidence analysis and tense meetings. Victoria watched, with a mixture of relief and apprehension, as the FBI agents meticulously examined every bite of information they had brought in. It was mid-afternoon when the door to the conference room opened abruptly. Victoria jumped to her feet, tears in her eyes, at the sight of her father entering. "Dad!" she exclaimed, running to hug him. Jonathan Sinclair hugged his daughter tightly, relief evident on his tired face. "It's all right now, darling, it's over." Alex watched the scene with a small smile, feeling the weight of the last few days finally beginning to dissipate. Agent Chen approached the group, her expression serious but with a hint of satisfaction. "Mr. Sinclair, Ms. Sinclair, the evidence you have provided is irrefutable. We are launching operations to arrest the main people involved in the energy consortium. Their actions have exposed one of the biggest corporate conspiracies of the last decade." Jonathan nodded gravely. "And Sinclair Tech?" "It's clean," Chen confirmed. "All charges against your company have been dropped. In fact, considering the crucial role you played in exposing this scam, I'd say Sinclair Tech's reputation has never been better." Victoria felt a wave of relief run through her body. Weeks of fear, uncertainty and danger were finally coming to an end. Her eyes met Alex's, and she felt her heart racing for reasons completely different from fear or anxiety. Hours later, back at the Sinclair mansion, Victoria stood on the balcony, watching the sun set over the bay. The sound of familiar footsteps made her smile before she even turned around. "So," Alex said, joining her on the balcony, "I guess my chauffeur days are over." Victoria laughed softly. "I think you've proved yourself to be much more than just a chauffeur, Alex." He smiled, his eyes fixed on the horizon. "You know, when I took this job, I never imagined I'd end up in the middle of a corporate conspiracy, running through the woods and delivering evidence to the FBI." "Do you regret it?" Victoria asked, her voice low and hesitant. Alex turned to her, his eyes intense. Not for a second. The air between them seemed charged with electricity. Victoria took a step towards him, her heart pounding. "Alex, He interrupted her gently, placing a finger over her lips. "Victoria, before you say anything, I need you to know. These last few months working for your family, getting to know you, have changed my life. You've changed my life." Victoria felt tears forming in her eyes. "You changed mine too, Alex. You showed me a world beyond the walls of this mansion, beyond the meeting rooms of Sinclair Tech. You showed me what's really important." Alex took her hands in his. "I love you, Victoria Sinclair, and no matter what the future holds for us, I want to face it by your side." With a sob that was half laugh, half cry, Victoria threw herself into Alex's arms. "I love you too, Alex Foster." Their lips met in a passionate kiss, years of unresolved tension and repressed emotions finally finding expression. When they broke apart, both panting and smiling, the sound of happy barking made them laugh. Max ran towards them, his tail wagging furiously. "I think someone approves," Alex joked, bending down to stroke Max's ears. Victoria smiled, watching the two of them, her heart filled with a happiness she had never experienced before. There, on that balcony, with the man she loved and the dog that had brought them together, Victoria knew she had found her true home. The sun finally set over San Francisco, marking the end of one chapter in their lives and the beginning of another. The journey had been long and dangerous, full of twists and turns and challenges. But in the end, Victoria and Alex emerged stronger, wiser, and, above all, together. As the first stars began to shine in the night sky, Victoria rested her head on Alex's shoulder, feeling truly at peace for the first time in weeks. The future was uncertain, but with Alex by her side, she was ready to face anything that came her way. Under the starry San Francisco sky, a new story was beginning. A story of love, courage, and the promise of a better tomorrow. If this story touched your heart, then don't forget to leave a like. Use the super thanks located just below the video to directly support the channel and help create more amazing content. Subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any updates. Now don't miss the next incredible story that's appearing on your screen. I greatly appreciate your support and hope to see you soon. Thank you for watching.